Hello everyone, welcome to Task IS. Today we will discuss Unit 6, that is Public and Civil Service Values and Ethics in Public Administration. One unit, that is Indian and World Philosophies, that we will discuss later. Now these are subtopics given in our unit, and first topic is status and associated problems. In this class we will try to cover this topic. One important thing is PDF for all lectures of ethics as well as anthropology are available in our Telegram channel, and link of this channel is given in description of video, so kindly avail these benefits from our Telegram channel and also share these videos so that others can also benefit from our inputs. Now before starting actual subtopic that is given in syllabus is status and problems associated with civil services, we have to cover some terms that are given in this unit and which are asked by UPSC. Firstly is public services. What do you mean by public service? Maybe UPSC can ask this term only. So the term public service is usually used to denote civil services, and these are those services which help government to implement all plans and programs. That means government has a function in which they determine broad guidelines, but here civil servants are those which implement those functions, and you can clearly understand that civil services are different from defense services, which are altogether a different aspect. Now public services are part of executive branch and public services are included in permanent branch, whereas politicians are included in temporary branch of executive. Now in our government system there are three different parts. Firstly is legislature, secondly is executive, and thirdly is judiciary. So public services are part of executive group and they are part of permanent executive group. Thus civil servants carry out orders of ministers and advise them in policy formulation. That means they have some role in policy formulation as well. Another important aspect is that public services have some certain features. They are identified with these characteristics. Firstly, expertise, vitality, and leadership qualities. So if someone is saying that leadership qualities are only for politicians, then that is wrong, because even your civil services values demand your leadership skills. So if you develop from beginning, then that will help you in interview stage as well as when you work at field, and these qualities will helpful in working of civil servants in professional and efficient manner. And these are some of the qualities, but you can write them in detail. If UPSC asks specifically about their values, then ethics and aptitude divide their qualities or their characteristics in two different ways. Ethics is right foundational values of civil services that we have covered in earlier chapter. So here you have to write some values like integrity, honesty, objectivity, unbiasedness, etc. And in aptitude you have to write some logical reasoning, this power of decision making. These are some of the values under aptitude, because civil services also take your aptitude test. So you can mention these qualities in two dimensions if specifically asked about their characteristics. So we have understood status of public services in our government system and their characteristics. Now apart from this, if you are writing about public services in detail, for example in essay, then you can cover historical part as well. Historical part, that means before independence, what is Lee Commission has mentioned, and by which act 1999 or 1935 when Public Service Commission or Federal Public Service Commission or state PSC has emerged and their constitutional status. Now after independence, mention their constitutional status, their working, etc., and their procedure of appointment you can mention. But these are part of your ethics or governance, so you can prepare them in paper 1 or paper 2 of GS. Now, why is ethics required in public administration? This question is very genuine and UPSC can ask this. If UPSC is still not asking, but these points will help you to write in case studies or other questions where you are lacking in words. So you can twist these words and write in stable place. Now, why ethics is required? Firstly, civil servants has a control over large sum of money, that means they have large financial powers and other law and order power that you have seen in case of curfew or section 144 during lockdown or earlier as well. Secondly, growing perception of corruption and nepotism in civil services, that means they are losing credibility. So now there is more focus on ethics or ethical values in civil servants. Secondly, discretionary power are very high which are given to civil servants. For example, they have power to decide which project will be given to which party, and these small steps can't be monitored by higher authorities. So there is a need of ethical values in administration. Secondly, power and information asymmetry. This is a racial problem in underdeveloped or developing countries because here gap between professional or expert as well as the local people whom civil servants will govern, this gap is high. Those vulnerable people don't know about their rights, they have lack of awareness regarding government schemes as well as other legal aspects. So here is duty of those experts to not exploit them but help them in their development. So due to this reason also value of ethical values is high. Thirdly, political influence, that means political interference as well as political influence and money power influence on civil servants is high, especially in this materialistic or consumerist world because consumerism is rising. So again, role of ethics is important. Now, government or civil servants which are also part of government has a wide influence of people and they are a role model for the nation. I am sure that some of you are inspired from some role models in civil services. Maybe you have seen them working at ground level in your village or district or city, and that was a motivation for you to work for people. So they are like a role model, and these role models are especially necessary in areas which are influenced by radical ideology or Naxalism issues or border tensions. So these role models are necessary in those areas. Secondly, build trust and efficiency, because when elections happen, political parties will change, but there is some trust and efficiency in our system because of continuance and stability of these civil servants. That's why they are called as the steel frame of our governance system. And these steel frames are, this word is used by great leader Sardar Patel, who has done a remarkable work in integration of our country. Another aspect is these ethical values will help in solving ethical dilemmas, because if civil servant has marriage of his daughter, he have to perform kanyadan. At the same time, there is a disaster happened in his district and he have to go there. His presence is necessary in vulnerable part of their district. So these two conditions are important for that individual, and in every aspect there is some moral or emotional duties attached. So deciding where to go and what to do is depends on his ethical value. So these situations where two equally important situations are there and anyone can't say this is right or this is wrong, in those situations only ethical values will help an individual, and these situations are called as ethical dilemmas. Now there are some loopholes will be present in rules and regulations or laws. So here the role of ethical values to not take benefits of those loopholes. For example, civil services values mention that civil servants should not take any gift that is greater than or equal to 5,000 in amount. But now the role of conscience or ethical values will come. I will cover word conscience in detail in this unit only, but for time being consider conscience as inner values, that is decided by moral values of an individual. So in case of 5,000 rupees, this is the upper limit that is decided by law, but it depends on conscience or moral values of an individual that he will not take 5 gifts which are equal to or less than to 3,000. That means this amount will be much higher than 5,000, but this is legal. So here role of ethical values of civil servants is important. I have covered different points here, but you can systematize these points in a dimensional approach. That means why ethical administration is important from perspective of an civil servant, from perspective of local people or vulnerable people, thirdly from perspective of our nation as a whole, because from perspective of civil servant it will help him to remain cheerful, be efficient, enjoy his work, stay confident. Secondly, for local people it will helpful in establishment of a good governance or ethical governance, and people will have trust and faith in their government. For a nation as a whole, because they are steel frame of our governance system and they are needed for development of our country, specifically if we will focus on inclusive development and at the same time focus on sustainable development. So you can write these extra points as well. Now role of government is to make it easy for the people to do good and difficult to do bad. This was a quote which was used by William Gladstone. So I have mentioned this quote so that you can write this anywhere in essay or an ethics paper. Now what is governance? We will discuss some terms which have been asked by UPSC and which are important to start this unit. So governance simply means a way or a manner in which power is exercised for management of resources of our country. That means governance is a value neutral term. There is focus on the management of resources. That's it. And here resources include your physical resources, your social resources. Physical resources include your minerals or forests, and social resources include your human aspect. So I hope this is clear to you. Now the power which is given in governance, this can be used for welfare of other people as well as for self gratification. That means governance word itself is not saying it is used for bad objective or it is used for good objective, and this can be a good or ethical governance as well. Good or ethical are showing a positive connotation, but there is slightly difference and I will discuss it later. Now in governance there are mainly 3 participants, that is state, society and market. You can mention a diagram, that is state, society and market. These are 3 participants in governance. That means governance is an inclusive term, and now you can differentiate between governance and government, because government is only one aspect that is related with state here, but governance is more inclusive. Governance includes your society, your market factor, that is your private parties as well. So I hope this is clear to you. Now, good governance. What do you mean by good governance? According to second ARC, good governance is based on 4 pillars, and these are 4 pillars. Firstly, ethos of public service. That means an individual who is doing public work, he should have those ethos, that means those values of public service, and these are participatory values, transparency value, and accountability values. That means an individual who is working for people should have these values, and these values, if imbibed in their work, then this is called as people centric development or people centric administration. Secondly, ethics. That individual should have some ethical values, and these ethical values like integrity, and you can mention other foundational values like honesty, objectivity, etc. Thirdly, he or she should follow principles of equity. That means there should be no any discrimination on the basis of caste, religion, race, etc. And he should treat every individual equally. But there should be special focus on vulnerable. These vulnerable can be minorities, lower caste people, lower class people. I am mentioning this because now these are treating separately, especially after giving reservation to 10% population of general class, of general caste as well. And this vulnerable can be old people, children, or women as well. Now, fourth pillar is efficiency. Now you can remember it with 4E: ethos, ethics, efficiency, or equity. Efficiency shows that you have to deliver public services at right time in an effective manner. So these are some of the pillars, that is structural aspect of good governance. Okay, after that there are some characteristics of good governance, and you can mention a diagram that these are some of the characteristics like participation, accountability, rule of law, consensus building between different people, there is transparency. So that's all for good governance. Now next term is ethical governance. Ethical governance will follow all principles of good governance, but there is another aspect, that is it will follow highest ethical standards in governance. So you have to understand this term. How can individual follow higher ethical standards in governance, and sometimes these are lacking in good governance. Consider a woman who is receiving pension benefits and she is not entitled for another benefits like distribution of food grains that are given to BPL family under Food Security Act. But actual reality is that her pension or her money is taken by her son, and she left alone without any help from her relatives. Now she is living in a beggar situation. She is asking others for giving food, and when she has contacted district authorities, that is DC, regarding his problems, then that particular administrator has two options. Firstly, from legal or good governance perspective, he will not allow this woman to take benefits, and there is nothing wrong in it because he is following rule of law, he is working very transparently, so he is following principle of good governance. Now there is no doubt on this aspect. But if she or he, that means that administrator, will take another step, that means he try to help that woman to take her pension benefits, maybe he will ask his son to help her financially as well as in emotional manner. He will take help of some NGOs to resolve this issue, and he may help this woman to ask for police help or other local leaders, so that some pressure on his son can be created so that this problem of financial issues can be solved. So these extra steps are part of ethical governance which are not present in good governance. Second aspect is that what is good and ethical is relative. That means maybe good or relative for someone is less good or less relative for second person. So these are some dynamic concepts, and their value also change according to time. For example, Britishers called Act of 1858 as an act of good governance, but if we look at that act from current times, then it was just a joke, because they have not given any responsible government and they have not fulfilled demands of local people. It was a kind of harassment law, but they have given it a name as a good governance because they consider it as a better law as compared to earlier laws. So that means their good was different from perspective of our Indian leaders that were fighting for freedom struggle at that point of time. Now, status and problems. This is actually topic that is mentioned in syllabus, and we will start from here. So firstly we will discuss about issues with the current governance structure, and later we will discuss about issues regarding specifically civil services or public services per se. So first issue is lack of integrated approach, because different ministries are focusing on same idea only, but they have different approaches. So that's why there is lack of an integrated approach. You can consider conflicted mandates sometimes by Department of Pharmaceuticals and Ministry of Health. Department of Pharmaceutical will come under Ministry of Chemicals and Fertilizers, but Ministry of Health is different. And sometimes Ministry of Environment and Forest have to give some directives regarding human health, but there is lack of coordination with Ministry of Health on those particular aspects, and these issues led to many conflicts. And you can consider another example of Ministry of Environment as well as Ministry of Infrastructure or Highways, where some conflicts happen on the issue of giving clearance to infrastructure projects, and due to this there is a delay in giving environment and other clearances, and this is one of the reason in rising NPA in India as well. You can connect these points. Secondly is extended vertical hierarchy. So there is a hierarchy is present, and in any governance structure you can see that at the lower level there is a clerical person who is working. Secondly, at block level you can see some BDO is working, who is block development officer, and you can see at district level that is DC. Even though other hierarchies like SDM at subdivision level, there are so much hierarchy that there is a time delay in flow of information from lower to higher as well as from higher to lower. And due to this hierarchy there are multiple contacts, multiple points of interaction of an citizen with different functionaries in administration. That's why multiple channels of contact and multiple chances of corruption. You can connect this point. Further, if there is so much hierarchy, so there will be a time delay in giving clearances, in clearing files or clearing projects which are of development nature. So these are reason for delay and less efficiency in our governance system. Secondly, red tapeism. Red tapeism word shows that there is excessive focus by civil servants on rules and regulations, and now their work is limited by these rules and regulations. That means now civil servants are not focusing on completing their work. Their approach of welfare of people is taken a backseat, but focusing on fulfilling all rules and regulations is become a frontline approach, so that they can argue that they have followed all rules and now they are not responsible or accountable for lack of good results. So this is another issue. Here you can write some points which are specifically for civil servants, issues with civil servants if UPSC has asked. For example, extended vertical hierarchy you can write in civil servants. Now bureaucracy, red tapeism, you can mention these points. Now gap between administration and citizen is widening. You can clearly see with case of politicians and citizens, because they have a periodical accountability in terms of elections, so that people will choose them. So during elections time there is increased contact between politicians and local people. But when we see about relation of civil servants and people, then this is a continuous monitoring and continuous relation. But now civil servant has acquired a class character. That means they are feeling now superior and they are not understanding actual issues of local people. That's why there is now gap is widening, and the earlier so called a trust and a bonding framework between politicians and local people that these civil servants were working, now that trust or building aspect is weakened because their contact with people is less now. Another aspect is that now contradiction and incompatibilities between different levels of bureaucracy. You can see when you will observe regarding police behavior at top level as well as at lower level. So if at top level individual is giving order regarding controlling law and order, but you have to focus on not violating human rights of innocent people. But maybe this local people or lower individual has a different perception regarding his service. Maybe he focused on just controlling situation to fulfill his duty on maintaining law and order. So these contradiction and conflicts are found specifically when their status is very less different. That means they are very close in their status, then there is higher chances of conflicts between different individuals. You can see sometimes different ideology between administrative part, that is IAS, and police officer, that is IPS, and due to this conflicts and to resolve this issue, now commissionerate system is establishing in different cities, so that time delay between coordination in at two different level can be reduced and an early step can be taken to maintain law and order in any city, especially in metropolitan cities where rate of crime is much higher. So you can connect this point as well. Now public services are becoming inadequate to taking up new tasks and challenges. Even some failure is observed in maintaining of law and order by bureaucracy. You can relate this point when with recent case of UP where encounter of a gangster has happened, but people has raised question regarding credibility of police forces. They are seeing that this encounter is a fake encounter. So this raises question on credibility of police forces in eyes of people, or police forces, you can per se that issue of credibility of civil servants which are part of our administration. So these are some of the status and problems which are associated with our governance system. If particularly asked about civil servants, then mention these points. Apart from this, mention some points regarding issues in selection of civil servants. That means I am focusing on aspects where some parliaments has raised question that civil servants are journalists, not specialists. And secondly, if they are focusing on particular service, for example foreign services, then they should have high language as well as diplomatic skills. If they are lacking in these aspects, then how they can perform good diplomatic relations at international platform. So these are another issue. And rise of corruption, nepotism in civil services is another common issue which is observed everywhere. Now, corruption is so much hot topic in civil services as well that I have to discuss it separately. Although there are some legal provisions which you have to understand under your polity and governance part, but I will try to cover some part here as well, so that maybe your revision happen, or it is also probability that you will learn some points from here as well. Now, corruption is simply mean you are abusing your public office for private gain, because aim of public office is public welfare, but you are not fulfilling that job from your office, and these gains are taken by giving malified reasons. That means whatever illegal reason you have to decide for taking any decision will be based on malified reasons, not on legal or welfare approach. This shows your intention of personal gain. And this corruption is not only at administrative level or not only at lower level, it is present at different stages and almost in every stages, starting from your policy formulation to your policy implementation. So policy formulation stage, in this stage policies are made for specific purpose and for particular groups. For example, FDI is liberated in particular sector under influence of a private group that will lead to development of crony capitalism. I hope you have heard this term because Economic Survey has discussed it earlier. So that's why there is nexus between business and politics will also happen. Policies are made according to the choices of businessmen. Now, why corruption happen, or what is the culture medium where corruption will survive? So this is that particular situation. That means there is monopoly is provided. You can relate with earlier aspect before globalization liberalization era of 1919 in case of India, where there is a monopoly by PSUs, especially PSUs, and that time if there is monopoly present, absence of competition, then supplier of service will try to take maximum benefits, and this will lead to development of corruption. Second is discretion. You can easily correlate with discretionary power that civil servants will enjoy, and they can use this discretionary power to give projects to any loyal one of those individuals or their close ones. That will lead to misuse of their power. Now, if these two conditions are existing but any accountability is lacking, that means sometimes monopoly is needed. For example, in defense sector there is need of monopoly by government, because here it is related with our security and we can't take any chance on national security or sovereignty of our country. But if there is monopoly as well as accountability, then there is no issue. But if only monopoly, then there is chances of corruption. Secondly, if discretion is provided to civil servants but there is no monitoring, no accountability, then that will give birth to corruption. It is not necessary that always that will give to corruption, but this will provide a potential ground for thriving of corruption. So these situations will describe when corruption can survive. You can write down these examples so that your answer will look more practical. Now, what is impact of corruption? You can write in various dimensions: impact of corruption on individual, impact of corruption on civil servants, and impact of corruption on our country or nation per se. You can define these points. So it impacts state's core functions like distribution, public services delivery, redistribution. You can mention about PDS system, public service delivery, regulation of markets. All these functions of government will take a backseat or they will work in less efficient manner. Overall, it will hinder economic growth of our country, because if inclusive development is not happening. If there is a high chances of corruption, then other issues like black marketing, hawala transactions, all these issues will happen, and that will create law and order situation also. And if there is issue of law and order situation and there is less efficiency in economy, of course then economic growth will not be there, and it will also hamper inclusive economic growth idea of our country. Thirdly, government will lose its credibility among people. That means now people have only one way, that means they will try to violate laws, they will try to raise their voice by violating laws and try to use violent means to draw attention of government. That means it will create a law and order problem, and you can correlate with Venezuela issue when they are going through a oil crisis. Now you can also correlate with issues of northeast, because these areas suffering from less economic development, then there is chances of higher radicalization of youth. You can correlate this point. Now if quality of public services is compromised, then you can connect that ultimately the poorest man in line will suffer most, because here his livelihood, his food security, all these aspects are at stake, and these are basic needs. So this is a worst form of human right violation that an individual will face. So these are impacts you can write in any manner, either this way or either in dimensional way. Now it is also morally wrong, because if someone is using as corruption as a means, then one individual will be very rich, but most of the people are living below the poverty line. That means income inequality will increase, and these lower people will face human right violations as well. Now rule of law or constitutional ethos will be compromised. You can connect this point as well. And other issues, money laundering, black money economy, these will hinder national economy, national security aspect. You can connect these points. Now legal reforms. What legal steps have been taken to fight corruption? Firstly, Prevention of Corruption Act, and now recently its amendment has also been taken, Whistleblower Protection Act, so that any individual can raise voice against corruption that is thriving in an organization. You have to read this act by your own. Now Vigilance Commission, this was established on the recommendation of Santhanam Committee, and you can mention that Vigilance Commission is a vigilance branch in our nation that is focusing on corruption specifically. You can also mention about State Vigilance Commission as well. Now Lokpal Act, so that all public functionaries including our Prime Minister is also included under Lokpal Act. And these steps are to increase transparency, to increase accountability of public functionaries. Now Benami Properties Act. Another issue is that under Article 311, civil servants are provided security of tenure, that is excessive security is provided to them. If this article is revoked and some provision regarding maintaining their accountability throughout the life is established, then civil servants will focus on higher efficiency and improving their work culture. But if there is a security of job and there is no incentive provided for good work, then there is less chances that an individual will take innovative steps for welfare of people or development of our country. But now lateral entry is provided, and there is chances that these lateral entry step will increase competition among our civil servants, and it will further improve their efficiency as well. Now you can mention some other steps like e-governance initiatives. You can mention about direct benefit transfer or Aadhaar, RTI Act, common entrance exams for different examinations, so that Now chances of corruption can be reduced. Even during elections, declaration of wealth and criminal records of candidates become mandatory so that criminalization of politics can be stopped. And this is also related with increasing money power in elections. Now linking of PAN-WIN, Aadhaar, demonetization, tax collection at source, these are another steps that government has taken. You can connect these points as well. Now what needs to be done so that corruption can be reduced? I feel that this topic is important, specifically because corruption or nepotism in Bollywood is highlighted these days, specifically after Sushant Singh Rajput's suicide case. So there is need to work on these aspects and you should cover this topic in detail. Now Santhanam committee and other commissions has given some recommendations and we can list down them. First step is reforms in bureaucracy. So some reforms which are advised include establishment of civil services board so that their promotion can be done by this independent civil services board, and political interference in working of civil servants can be reduced, and this will break nexus between politicians and civil services. Secondly, reducing hierarchy levels. I have explained it earlier what is the issue. If that issue of information asymmetry can be resolved and there is more transparency, more contact between higher level and lower level bureaucracy, then chances of higher efficiency and less chances of delay in projects clearance will be observed. Thirdly, periodic sensitive training, especially who are at higher level, especially if someone is working at chief secretary level or cabinet secretary level, then at that time also sensitive training should be provided, and this periodic training will helpful in maintaining their efficiency, maintaining their higher ethical as well as moral standards. Now simplifying their disciplinary proceedings so that any prosecution action can be taken against them. Now objectivity in performance evaluation, you can mention that 360-degree performance evaluation should be taken so that only influence of seniors can be reduced in evaluating their performance, because if only one individual is giving recommendations, then chances of developing nexus with that senior is higher. Now second is electoral reforms. This is also needed for reforming our governance system. Some of the important points are banning the criminals, that means stopping entry of criminals in legislature. Criminalization of politics should be stopped by ending RPA, that is Representation of People Act. Now banning cash donations to political parties, and you can use another methods like electoral bonds which are comparatively transparent according to Election Commission of India. Now empowering ECI so that model code of conduct can be given a statutory backing, and if ECI is empowered then he can deregister some of the political parties which are not performing well but they are taking benefits of registration. Now paid news or fake news, they should be targeted by considering them as a criminal offense. Now state funding of elections so that everyone, even poorest of the poor people, can take part in politics. Now politics is considered as an area of only rich as well as muscle power individuals, so that perception should be break, and this was mentioned by Indrajit Gupta committee, which was a committee for recommendation on electoral reforms. Now changes in governance, this is third aspect to counter corruption. Firstly, right to information, there should be strict implementation of it, and if there is issue regard in between right to information as well as Official Secrets Act, then there should be judicious use of Official Secret Act to maintain secrecy. Otherwise focus should be on increasing information or transparency as much as possible. Citizen charter or social audit should be given a legal backing. I will discuss these terms later, or maybe you know from your governance part knowledge. Now, empowering the local body so that direct democracy can be strengthened. That means if you are empowering local people, they will automatically demand their rights, and this will put pressure on our administrative people so that accountability of those officers towards people will be increased and a people centric development will happen in our constituency. Now, anti-defection law should be amended so that horse trading issue which we have observed in MP or issue currently we are facing in Rajasthan, these crises can be solved. If code of ethics and code of conduct for ministers bring out, then it also improve ethical administration in our country. And code of conduct is given for civil servants, but there is a need of code of ethics for civil servants also to improve their ethical as well as moral values. Now, Prevention of Corruption Act. Recently this act was amended, so I am discussing this act especially. Other acts you have to prepare your own. The 1980 Act it enlarged the term of public servant, and now a large number of employees are included in its ambit. But there is issue that MP and MLAs, even MP and MLAs are kept out of this. So second part of reforms that were given by Santhanam committee, that is electoral reforms, so that is not fulfilling here. That means if MP and MLA are removed for corruption act, then there is a continuance of issues. Now thirdly is punishment was minimum 6 months and maximum 5 years. This was a provision mentioned in this act, and the person who is giving bribe is considered as a victim. He was not considered as an offense doer in earlier act. So there are some limitations in this act. That's why amendment has happened recently. Due to this amendment, this act become important for you. So one of the most important provision of this amendment is that now citizens who is giving or offering bribery to public servant are also become liable for punishment. Even 7-year imprisonment will be given, but there is some exception that if within 7 days this individual will inform to authorities that this officer is asking for bribe, then this individual will be considered as a victim only. Another aspect is that for which this even this amendment is criticized, this is that now criminal misconduct that was given on violation of corruption act is limited only to 2 offenses, that is misappropriation of public property for private gratification, and secondly is if someone is collected unexplained wealth. That means he is not even knowing sources of income. These 2 aspects are treated as a criminal offense, but earlier there were 5 instances where this is considered as a criminal offense. This amendment is taken to safeguard honest officers from undue harassment in corruption cases. So what was earlier and what was new now? Have a look on it. Bribery. What is new? This new is that now even citizens who is giving bribery is liable for punishment of 7 years, but earlier this provision was not given. Secondly, pre-investigation approval is needed for filing complaint against any public servant, but there is exception that if that person is caught red-handed, then there is no need of pre-investigation approval. This is to safeguard honest officers. Sanction for prosecution, this sanction earlier for only serving individuals, but now this is extended to even retired public servants also. This was again to safeguard honest officers. Now criminal misconduct, earlier 5 cases, now only 2 cases, that is misappropriation of property and intentionally enriching his property. These are only 2 criteria, and these steps second, third and fourth are needed because if some individual or some public servant is facing excessive harassment, he will not take innovative steps, and these innovative steps are needed for development and welfare of our country. So to providing some kind of autonomy, this amendment has been taken. Now, forfeiture of property. During investigation also, special court can order for controlling and confiscate property of public servants. Earlier this provision was not given. So that's all for today. Although we have covered only one subtopic, that is status and problems of civil servants, but we have discussed earlier important terms like public services, governance, good governance or ethical governance. I hope you have enjoyed this lecture, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe Task IAS. Thank you so much.